Some houses don't just hold memories, they hold voices. Make yourselves comfortable. This is the story of a home that waited. We begin. The first thing Emily noticed about the house was the silence. Not the ordinary quiet of a place at the end of a long country road, but a thick, waiting silence, like the house was holding its breath. She stepped out of the car, and the heat of the southern afternoon wrapped around her like a blanket. Cicadas screamed in the trees. The sky was a hard, flat blue. The gravel crunched under her sneakers as she walked toward the porch, suitcase dragging behind her. This was supposed to be a new beginning. New job, new state, new life. Her mother had called it going back to your roots. But Emily didn't feel any roots here. Just a listing on a rental site. Historic cottage. Quiet. Perfect for writers and remote workers. Family property. Family property. Her mother hadn't explained what that meant. She had only said, "My side of the family is from there. It's been in the blood a long time," and then gone strangely quiet. Emily climbed the 3 wooden steps to the porch. The boards creaked under her weight. An old, tired sound. The house was 2 stories, white paint peeling, black shutters hanging a little crooked. Glass panes in the windows reflected the afternoon like blank eyes. She slid the key into the lock. The doorknob was warm under her hand, worn smooth by years of turning. The key turned with a soft, reluctant click. As the door moved, the silence inside seemed to lean forward. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Here we go." The air inside was cooler, tinged with dust and something else. Old wood, old paper, a trace of something sweet and unfamiliar, like a perfume that had soaked into the walls. It was darker inside than she expected. Tall windows, but heavy curtains half drawn. The narrow hallway opened into a front room with a high ceiling and an old stone fireplace. A staircase climbed along the wall, its banister turned glossy by hands that had run along it for generations. Her suitcase wheels bumped over a warped floorboard. As she crossed into the living room, a floorboard groaned. Not from her, but from somewhere deeper in the house, as if answering her arrival. She stopped. "House sounds," she told herself under her breath. Just house sounds. She set her backpack on the sagging couch and turned in a slow circle, taking in the room. The furniture was mismatched but solid. An old wooden coffee table with scratches in the shape of circles, like someone had dragged plates across it for years. A tall bookcase against the far wall, half empty. An old piano in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. She walked to the piano and lifted the fallboard. A few keys were chipped, one completely missing. She pressed a key at random. The note rang out, thin and slightly out of tune, echoing up into the high ceiling. For a second, just after the sound faded, Emily thought she heard something else. A faint whisper of a melody, almost like someone humming along from another room. She stood very still. The refrigerator in the kitchen clicked on. The hum of the appliance broke the moment. "Old houses are loud," she said to the empty room. "That's all." She opened windows, pulled back curtains, let the light in. Dust danced in the golden beams like tiny turning galaxies. The house looked less haunted in the light and more tired, worn, waiting. Her bedroom was upstairs at the front of the house, with a view of the long dirt drive and the line of trees beyond. The bed was already made, white sheets tucked tight. A faded quilt folded neatly at the foot. On the small wooden dresser stood a mirror in an oval frame. When she saw her reflection, she flinched. Not because of anything unusual. Just her own face, brown skin shiny with sweat, dark hair twisted into a bun atop her head. But because, for a split second, she'd expected to see someone else. She laughed quietly at herself. "You're doing it again," she said. spooking yourself before anything even happens. She spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking. Clothes in the closet, laptop on the little desk by the window, a single framed photo of her and her mother on the nightstand. Taken last year, both of them smiling, though her mother's eyes looked tired. Around sunset, the light in the house changed. It turned from warm gold to a dim amber glow, then slid into blue. The lines of the hallway blurred a little in the half-dark. The cicadas outside gave way to crickets. An owl called once, somewhere deep in the trees. Emily made a simple dinner in the kitchen. Pasta from a box, jarred sauce. The cabinets were mostly empty, except for a few dusty jars and an old tin labeled flour. She ate at the small table by the back window, looking out over the yard. Beyond the patchy grass and the rusted clothesline, the land stretched flat and open. In the distance, she could make out the faint straight lines of something. Rows, maybe. Old fields. She felt a strange tightness in her chest, like she was looking at a photograph she had seen before and couldn't place. When she finished eating, she washed her dishes by hand in the deep porcelain sink. The hot water steamed up around her fingers. That was when she heard it for the first time, clearly enough that there was no way to mistake it for pipes or settling wood. A sound, very soft, from somewhere beyond the back door. A voice. She froze, hands still under the water, the plate slippery between her fingers. It was a woman's voice, low and rhythmic. Not speaking exactly, but singing. Not a full song, just a fragment, like a line caught on the wind. Carry me home. The words were so faint they were almost part of the hum of the night. But there they were. Each syllable rode on a note that seemed to vibrate against the glass of the window. Emily slowly turned the faucet off. The sudden absence of running water made the voice stand out more. Carry me home. She dried her hands on the dish towel without taking her eyes off the window. The yard outside was a dark square, shapes barely visible. The silhouette of the rusted clothesline, the vague, blacker rectangle of a small shed to the right, the tall, darker wall of trees beyond. No lights, no neighbors' houses, no cars passing on the road. "Hello," she called, immediately feeling foolish. The voice did not answer. The singing did not get louder or softer. It stayed right where it was. Not out in the yard, not inside with her, but somewhere in between, like it was caught in the wall. A chill broke out along her arms. Emily moved closer to the window. She pressed her palms lightly to the cool glass. Her breath fogged a small circle. The singing stopped. Silence rushed in, so complete that she could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She waited. Nothing. Okay, she whispered. That was weird. She checked the back door. It was locked. She clicked the deadbolt again just to feel the solid resistance. Before bed, she wandered the house with her phone flashlight, more to prove to herself that there was nothing there than anything else. Living room, empty. Hall closet, only an old broom. Under the staircase, a low storage space with a few cardboard boxes and a folded metal chair. On an impulse, she tugged one of the boxes out. Inside were old linens, yellowed at the edges. Buried under them, her fingers brushed against something smooth and hard. She lifted it out. It was a wooden plaque about the length of her forearm, dark with age. The surface was worn, but there were letters carved into it, uneven but careful. She angled her phone's light. The Carter House. Her last name was Carter. She stared at the plaque, a prickle moving up the back of her neck. Family property, her mother had said. Emily swallowed. Okay, she said to the empty hallway. So this really is us. On the back of the plaque, in faded paint, was a year. 1849. Her throat went dry. She put the plaque back, suddenly not ready to touch it any longer. The air under the stairs felt thicker, harder to breathe. By the time she changed into a t-shirt and shorts and slid under the quilt in her bedroom, the house had settled into its nighttime sounds. The refrigerator hummed and clicked. The old wood took slow, deep breaths, expanding and contracting in the cooler air. She turned off the lamp. The room fell into shadow, blue and gray. A slice of moonlight cut across the floor. Sleep did not come easily. Her mind turned over the day, the drive, the key in the lock, the old piano, the plaque with her name on it. And under all of it, like a low note under a song, that voice. Carry me home. She woke sometime later, her heart already beating too fast, like she had been running in a dream. The room was darker now. The moon had moved. The slice of light was gone. Only the faint orange glow of the digital clock on her nightstand marked the shape of the world. 2:17 a.m. For a moment, she had no idea what had pulled her out of sleep. Then she heard it. Not the singing this time. Chains, very soft, very far, but unmistakable. The metallic clink of links brushing against each other in a slow, dragging rhythm. The hairs on her arms and the back of her neck lifted. The sound was not inside her room. It was not in the hallway. It was somewhere below, downstairs or under the house or inside the bones of it. Clink, pause, clink. It sounded like someone was walking with something heavy at their ankles. Each step measured, careful. Emily held her breath. Every muscle in her body clenched. The quilt felt suddenly too thin between her and the air. Clink. She squeezed her eyes shut and told herself, over and over, this is pipes. This is the house. This is nothing. This is nothing. Another sound joined the faint chain rattle. A murmur of voices. Not one, but several, overlapping. Too low to make out words. The cadence rose and fell, like people in the next room, talking in an old movie with the volume turned almost all the way down. Emily's eyes flew open. The voices were under her, under the floor. She could not make out what they were saying, but she could tell one thing. They were not calm. There was an urgency in the rise and fall, in the way sentences broke off and overlapped. Her hand fumbled for her phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up her face. The brightness hurt her eyes, but the familiar blue glow was an anchor. She opened the recorder app and, without thinking it through, pressed the red button. The voices went on for a few more seconds. One rose above the others for a brief instant. A woman's voice, strained and sharp with fear or anger. She couldn't tell which. "Don't you touch her!" The rest was swallowed in a rush of overlapping sound, and then, just as abruptly as it had begun, everything cut off. Silence crashed back into the room. Emily lay there, phone pressed to her chest, listening so hard that her head hurt. Nothing. No chains, no voices. Only the refrigerator humming faintly downstairs and a car, very far away, passing once on the road. Her thumb hovered over the stop button. She tapped it with a hand that shook slightly. In the stillness, her own recorded breathing sounded too loud in her ears. Later, she would play the audio back. She would listen to that dark slice of night again and again, straining to catch the edges of words inside the static. She would send it to her mother, who would go silent on the phone in a way that made Emily's stomach drop. But for now she was alone in the dark in a house with her last name carved into an old piece of wood and a history that, suddenly, felt very close. The house had heard her the moment she walked in. Now, it was starting to speak back. Chapter 2. The House That Remembers. The first night, Emma told herself it was the plumbing. Old houses creaked, they sighed, they shifted in their sleep. That was normal. The real estate agent had said it with a reassuring laugh as they'd walked the narrow hallway 2 weeks earlier. "It's from the 1840s. If it didn't creak, I'd be worried." Emma had nodded, pretending she wasn't already half in love with the uneven floors and wavy window glass. But at 2:17 a.m., lying on an air mattress in an almost empty bedroom, she woke up to a sound she couldn't file under plumbing. Someone was humming, not a tune she recognized. A low, wavering hum, like a voice trying to stay quiet and failing. It came from somewhere below her, down through the old wood joists, rising like cold air. Emma held her breath. The hum stretched, bent into something that might have been words in another century. Then faded. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting. She forced out a nervous laugh into the darkness. "It's the fridge," she whispered to herself. Or something. The fridge, 2 rooms away, clicked on right then with a mechanical buzz. For a second, that coincidence was comforting. Then she heard it again. Not humming this time. Metal. A faint rhythmic clink, distant but sharp. Metal on metal, with a soft drag in between. Clink, scrape, clink, scrape. Slow, steady, like something, or someone, moving and hitting against iron every few steps. Her fingers closed around her phone. 2:19 a.m. No notifications, no messages, just the thin glow on her face and the weight of the house pressed in around her. She flicked on the flashlight. The bedroom looked more pathetic than haunted in the harsh white beam. 1 duffel bag, 1 suitcase, a stack of sealed boxes labeled in black marker. Books, winter clothes, kitchen. No curtains yet, just bare windows mirroring her small, pale face back at her. The ceiling fan she'd sworn to replace sagged a little. Motionless. The sound had stopped. "New house," she muttered, throat dry. New sounds. She kept the flashlight on until exhaustion smothered her fear. The next time she opened her eyes, weak gray light was leaking past the windows and the air mattress had half deflated beneath her. The day made everything smaller. By 9 a.m., Emma had coffee in her system and her laptop open at the old pine kitchen table she'd thrifted before the move. Light slanted in through the window over the sink, revealing dust motes and the faint hex pattern of ghost floor tiles where someone had ripped up linoleum years ago. She opened a new document, typed a title, Content Calendar Q3, and stared at it. Her channel needed a pivot. That much she knew, moving from Chicago to the middle of nowhere, Georgia, as her friends had dramatically put it, wasn't just a change of scenery. It was supposed to be a reset. No more trying to compete with a million other 20-somethings filming in beige apartments. She had a literal piece of American history now, a background people would click on. She looked up at the high ceiling, at the uneven line where new drywall met old plaster in a kind of uneasy truce. "You better be worth the mortgage," she told the house. Her Wi-Fi stuttered, then caught. 3 bars, good enough. She pulled up an email from her mom instead of working, reading it for the 3rd time. "Honey, I know it's not what you're used to, but that old place has good bones. The neighborhood ladies in town are already impressed. You got the Marshall house at that price. Don't tell them you think the kitchen is aesthetic, or they'll think you're crazy. Send pictures when you can. Call me tonight. Love, Mom, Marshall house." That was what everyone called it here, with the easy assumption that she knew what that meant. The agent, the bank officer, the clerk at the hardware store, who'd given her a 10% discount when she said the address. "Y'all moving into the Marshall place? Big porch, oak tree out front?" He'd said it like someone might say the White House. Emma had smiled, said yes, and didn't ask questions. She didn't want any reason to back out. The inspection had been fine. The price had been almost suspiciously good. The stories, if there were any, could wait. Her cursor blinked on the blank white page. She clicked into her Notes app instead and scrolled through video ideas she'd brainstormed on the drive down. Moving into a 200-year-old house alone. Am I insane? Haunted? Exploring my creepy basement at midnight. Day in the life of a freelance editor in the Deep South. Reacting to my DNA test results. I was not ready. She hesitated on the last one. The file from the DNA site was still sitting unopened in her inbox. She'd spat into the tube months ago, mostly because an ad had popped up after a late-night spiral of videos about roots and identity and African-American genealogy. Then her life had blown up. Breakup, job going fully remote, sublet falling through. The hasty decision to put everything she owned into a U-Haul and head south. The results had come in while she was somewhere in Tennessee. Emma closed the laptop. The house made a small, hollow pop as the sun warmed its old bones. Fine. Content calendar later. She had to finish unpacking, then figure out where the persistent smell of something sweet and burnt in the hallway was coming from. It reminded her of molasses left too long on a hot stove. By noon, boxes had exploded into piles. Her bedroom was half set up. Her office was officially a graveyard of cables and extension cords. She found a framed photo of her grandmother, wrapped in an old sweater, and set it gently on the mantel in the living room. In the picture, Grandma Lila was about Emma's age, standing in front of a tiny brick row house in Cleveland with her hand shading her eyes, as if the sun had surprised her. The corners of the photo were worn from years in a cheap frame. "Guess we're both starting somewhere new," Emma murmured. She checked the time. If she wanted to shoot anything today, she had to do it while there was still light. She propped her phone on a stack of books, clipped a small ring light to a chair, and framed the shot so that the tall, wavy glass window and the thick, white-painted trim stood behind her. The background made her look smaller, like she was sitting inside an old photograph. She hit record. "Hey guys," she began, then winced. Too bright, too chirpy for how she actually felt. She cleared her throat and tried again, letting her natural voice settle. "Okay, so I did a thing," she said, a little laugh edging her words. "I moved. Out of the city. Way out. Like your Uber driver declines the ride out. And I'm filming this in my, wait for it, 1840s house in Georgia." She spread her hands to show the room behind her. "I'm officially that person who moves into the creepy old house alone. So if this video suddenly cuts off and you never hear from me again, it's because the ghosts got me. Like, comment, subscribe." She smiled, and it felt real this time. As she spoke, a draft slid across the back of her neck. The tiny hairs lifted. She ignored it, pushing through her intro, talking about leaving Chicago, about wanting slower days and more space and fewer sirens through her window at 3 in the morning. It wasn't until she was editing an hour later, earbuds in, that she noticed it. At the 38-second mark, right after she said, "Because the ghosts got me," a sound slid under her words. It was so soft that on first listen it registered as a glitch, or maybe the movement of her chair. She scrubbed back, turned the volume up, and played it again. "Because the ghosts got me. Like, comment, subscribe." Underneath her voice, a whisper. Not clear, not distinct, but shaped like syllables. She boosted the audio of that clip and listened again, this time only to the background. The whisper came through like breath over glass. 3 sounds, not modern English, not anything she could place. The vowels were long, the last consonant swallowed. Emma's pulse ticked faster in her throat. "Okay," she said aloud, ripping one earbud out. "Okay, it's ambient noise, cars, a neighbor, something." There were no cars on her road. The nearest neighbor's house was a 1/4 mile away. She played it again. The second time, something about the cadence tugged at her. Not a glitch, not random, deliberate, the way a voice is deliberate even when it's tired. She exported that tiny slice of video and sent it to her friend Mia with a text. "Tell me this is just my chair squeaking and not my new roommate from the 1800s. The house seemed to lean in around her while she waited. A fly bumped dully against the window pane. Outside, the air was heavy, the way it gets before a thunderstorm, except the sky was a flat, hard blue. The sweet burnt smell in the hallway curled in again, thicker now, like something in another room had just started to smoke. Her phone buzzed. Mia had sent back a voice note instead of text. Emma pressed play. "Okay, first of all, I hate you for moving into a horror movie without me," Mia's familiar voice said. "Second, I isolated that creepy little whisper thing and, girl, that's a voice. I can't tell what it's saying, but it's definitely somebody. You need to put that in the video. Title it, 'I caught this on camera my first night in a 200-year-old house,' and enjoy your million views." Emma swallowed. "So you don't think it's like pipes? Pipes don't have accents. Also, when are you inviting me over?" Emma laughed, but it stuck in her chest. "As soon as I find the nearest airport, and maybe a priest. Or a historian. Seriously though, don't freak out. Old houses are loud. Could be the wind. Could be your phone mic glitching. Just, if a Victorian child shows up in your hallway at 3 a.m., FaceTime me." They talked a little longer, about Mia's latest terrible date, about the fact that the grocery store here closed at 8, about how many spiders Emma had already murdered. When she hung up, the house felt a fraction less empty. She turned back to the laptop, played the clip again, and this time she tried to listen like she was editing content, not like she was alone in a house 800 miles from anyone who had ever known her as a kid. If she kept the whisper in, people would notice. They always did. Viewers had an uncanny ear for anything weird in the background. Mysterious shadows, reflections, strange noises. It would drive engagement. Even if it was nothing more than a trick of the mic, it was good. She cut the whisper down to a few seconds, boosted it slightly, and added a subtitle. She'd decide later. By late afternoon, the heat outside had thickened. Clouds were building at the horizon, big and white and innocent now, dark gray smudged underneath. Emma wandered the house with her phone, filming establishing shots. The staircase rail worn smooth by generations of hands. The narrow back hall with its sagging ceiling. The front porch with its wide boards and the view of the giant live oak in the yard. The oak had been the thing that sold her on the place. Not the hardwood floors or the 12-foot ceilings, not the price. Unbelievably low for any house, much less one with so much space. The oak had spread its branches like it was holding up the sky itself. The listing had said it was at least 150 years old. She stood under it now, looking up. The leaves whispered in a breeze she couldn't feel. Her phone buzzed in her back pocket. Another email from the DNA company, subject line. "We found DNA matches for you, Emma." She stared at it, thumb hovering. The sweet burnt smell drifted faintly out onto the porch, as if the house was exhaling. "Not today," she muttered, and slid the phone away. That night the storms never came. The clouds piled up and then dissolved, leaving the air heavy and restless. Emma went to bed early, body sore from lifting boxes, head buzzing with cut clips and potential video titles. She woke up at 1:54 a.m. to singing, soft, low, distant. Not the airy hum from the night before. Actual singing, threaded with a rhythm that was too steady to be anything else. Her heart hammered. The sound came from directly below her, through the floor. A woman's voice, rough with fatigue or age, carrying a tune that rose and fell in a pattern she didn't recognize. It wasn't in English, or if it was, the words had been worn down into something older. Vowels stretched long and slow, consonants swallowed. Emma lay frozen, listening. It wasn't a radio. There were no lyrics she could hook onto, no ad breaks, no static. Just that voice, joined after a moment by another. Lower one. A second woman, or maybe a man, their tone braided with the first in a call and response that made the small hairs on Emma's arms stand up. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and hit record on the voice memos app, holding it a few inches above the floor. The song went on for maybe 30 seconds more, then stopped so abruptly it felt like someone had cut a wire. Silence. Emma waited, counting in her head. 30 seconds, a minute, 2, nothing. She only realized she'd been holding her breath when her chest hurt. She let it out in a rush, thumb fumbling to stop the recording. The timer read row 31. She listened back. The recording was faint, almost drowned in the soft hiss of ambient noise. But it was there, the low rise and fall of the melody, the second voice sliding in like a shadow. She could hear her own breathing layered over it, quick, shaky. Her mind rolled through rational explanations and discarded them one by one. A neighbor outside? No. It was coming from under her bed, from inside the bones of the house. Some weird feedback from a device. She didn't own a speaker system. Her TV was still in a box. The bed frame creaked as she sat up. The night pressed in against the windows. Without the city's glow, the darkness here was total. Her reflection hung in the black panes. Wide eyes, messy hair, the faint ghost of light from her phone. The staircase groaned once, a soft settling sound, as if someone had put weight on a step and then pulled back. Get a grip, she told herself. You're an adult. You don't believe in... A word surfaced in her memory, uninvited from a college class she'd almost failed. Antebellum. Before the war. Old houses, old songs, old ghosts. Her mouth was dry. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood, every instinct screaming at her to stay put. The floor was cool under her bare feet. She opened her camera app, thumb hovering over the video icon like that would protect her. "Hello," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "Is someone there?" Silence answered. She stepped into the hallway. The sweet burnt smell hit her like a wall, stronger now, almost choking, like sugar scorching in a deep pot. It was wrong for the hour, wrong for the season. No one was cooking anything in this house. Emma's stomach flipped. The hallway looked ordinary in the dim nightlight's glow. 3 closed doors, a narrow runner rug, the faint outline of the attic pull string in the ceiling. Downstairs, a pale rectangle of moonlight fell across the foyer floor from the transom window over the front door. She gripped the banister and started down. Each step complained softly, a language of its own. When she reached the bottom, the smell was nearly overpowering. It seemed to pool near the threshold to the back of the house, where the kitchen and the old servant's staircase were. She turned toward it. For a half second, the air shifted. The narrow back hall, painted a safe modern gray, flickered, not with light, but with the sense of someone. A pressure, like walking into a room where a conversation had just been happening. The hairs on her arms prickled. She took one more step. A sound came from the kitchen, sharp and unmistakable. The soft clatter of metal on metal. Not pots, smaller, the way a chain sounds when it slides against itself. Emma's body reacted before her brain did. She spun and bolted up the front stairs, heart in her throat, the banister a blur under her hand. She didn't stop until she was back in her bedroom, with the door closed, chest heaving. She leaned against the door, listening. Nothing followed her. No footsteps, no voices. The smell faded slowly, as if a window had been opened somewhere she couldn't see. Her phone buzzed in her hand, making her jump. A notification from the DNA app, persistent as ever. "We've found new matches for you. Explore your family tree now." She laughed once, a broken sound. "Of course you have," she whispered. Back in bed, covers pulled up to her chin like she was 8 years old again. She opened the recording she'd made. She played it once more, volume up, eyes closed. This time, with the adrenaline ebbing and her mind reaching for patterns, she could almost hear something like a word at the very end of the song. A soft, breathy Emma. Except it wasn't quite that. The vowel was longer, the consonants blurred. A name formed in a mouth that had never said hers. She shut the phone off and lay in the dark, the house breathing slowly around her. In the morning, with light painting warm rectangles on the bedroom floor and birds shrieking in the oak tree outside, her fear felt not silly, exactly, but out of proportion. She listened to the recording again and heard mostly static. The singing was there, but slight. The clink of metal in the kitchen could have been anything. She made coffee. She opened her laptop. She tried to work. Instead, her fingers opened a browser and typed, Marshall House, Georgia history. The search results weren't as dramatic as her imagination had been expecting. No true crime podcasts, no ghost hunter blogs. A couple of local history sites, a scanned page from a 1970s county heritage book, a mention in a walking tour brochure of historic homes. She clicked. The brochure's text was dry, but one line snagged her. Built c. 1843 by planter Thomas A. Marshall. The house is one of the oldest remaining structures in the county. Oral history suggests the property once included extensive fields worked by enslaved laborers prior to the Civil War. Emma stared at the word enslaved until it blurred. She clicked the heritage book scan. The resolution was terrible, the font tiny, but she read. The Marshall Place, as it is still known, passed through several hands following emancipation. Stories persist of a song that could be heard near the old kitchen house on certain nights, though no one now recalls its exact words. Her skin went cold. She looked around at her cheerful cardboard boxes, at the IKEA lamp, at the laptop open on a recipe blog. The air felt different now, as if the walls had just cleared their throat. Emma closed the tab. In her inbox, the DNA email waited, patient. She clicked it open before she could change her mind. A spinning circle, then a pastel-colored interface with percentages and pie charts. Regions, migration paths. She scrolled past them, eyes snagging only on the broad strokes, West Africa, southeastern U.S., and went straight to the section, labeled DNA matches. A list appeared. Distant cousins, third and fourth and fifth. Names she'd never seen before, scattered across states she'd never visited. One name near the top made her thumb pause. L. Marshall, estimated third cousin. Her mouth went dry. She clicked the profile. No photo, just a gray silhouette. Location, Georgia. Family tree, private. Emma sat very still, feeling the house lean in. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Downstairs a floorboard creaked. Not randomly, once, then again. The slow, deliberate cadence of someone walking the length of a room. For the first time since she'd moved in, she let herself say it, even if only in the quiet of her own mind. Maybe this isn't just an old house. Maybe it was a story that had started long before she ever set foot on its porch. And maybe, whether she was ready or not, it had been waiting for her. The first time the house answered her directly, Emma was holding a boom mic over an empty chair. It was a week after the night of the singing. In the intervening days, she'd tried very hard to be normal. Normal was going into town for groceries and pretending not to notice how heads turned when she said her new address at the checkout. Normal was filming B-roll of Spanish moss and dusty antique stores for a small-town diaries vlog. Normal was opening her laptop every morning and doing client edits like nothing about her life had shifted sideways. Normal was also not sleeping very well. The singing hadn't come back. The clink of metal hadn't either. But sometimes when she was washing dishes or brushing her teeth, something in the edge of her hearing would twitch. A breath that wasn't hers. A shift in the walls like a body turning over in bed. She told herself it was the house settling, or the air conditioning cutting on, or the way the wind pushed through the eaves. Still, she started leaving a lamp on in the hall outside her bedroom at night. On the seventh day, she did what she should have done from the beginning, if she was going to live in this place and use it as content. She decided to make it a video. Not a cheap, gone wrong prank. Not fake screams and friends in sheets jumping out of closets. A real, controlled, watch me figure this out investigation. A story. First rule of the internet, Mia had said on FaceTime when Emma pitched it to her. If something creepy happens and you don't film it, did it even happen? Now Emma had her camera on a tripod in the living room, her shotgun mic on a stand, and a second cheap camera, her old one from college, set up in the hallway, pointing toward the kitchen. "This is overkill," she muttered, tightening the last tripod knob. "I live alone, but sure, let me act like a full production crew." She stepped in front of the main camera, checked the frame. The mantel and Grandma Lila's photo were visible behind her. She'd set the shot lower than usual so the top of the big doorway into the hall showed, so viewers would be able to see if anything moved. The word lodged in her throat. She hit record. "Okay," she said, sitting down in the chair, folding her hands to hide that they were a little shaky. "Hi. If you're new here, I'm Emma. I edit videos for a living, and last week I moved into a very old house alone because I make great life choices." She smiled. It eased some of the tightness in her chest. "So, today's video is going to be different." She glanced back over her shoulder as if the house might lean into frame. "Some of you heard it already. In my last upload there was a sound at, like, 38 seconds. I left it in with question marks on the screen. A lot of you commented saying it sounded like a voice." She cut in a clip on her phone to remind herself of the timing, scrolled through dozens of comments. "I replayed the whisper 10 times. What is that?" She read, half laughing. "Not me watching this at 2 a.m. and hearing someone breathing behind Emma. Okay, rude, but also, same." She lowered the phone, let her face grow more serious. "So, here's the part I didn't put in that video," she said. "A couple nights after I filmed that, I woke up to singing from somewhere under my bedroom, and I know how that sounds. I know, but I recorded it." The air seemed to tighten, just slightly. She pushed through it. "I'm going to play that recording for you guys in a sec, and then, if I don't wimp out, we're going to do a little audio experiment. I'm basically going to leave my cameras and mics running in the house and see if we catch anything. Like an overnight session." She winced a little at the word session. It made this feel more serious than she wanted it to. "Also, disclaimer," she added quickly, looking straight into the lens. "I'm not trying to provoke anything. I'm not here to play with Ouija boards or disrespect anybody. This house is old, and it has history. If there's energy, or whatever you want to call it here, I'm just trying to document. And also maybe sleep better if I can tell myself it's just weird acoustics." Her throat felt dry. She picked up her phone, held it close to the mic, and played the 31 seconds of audio she'd captured that night, even though she'd heard it a dozen times. Hearing it amplified through the shotgun mic made her hands sweat. That low, steady melody, woven with the second voice. The way the song just cut off, mid-phrase. Her own breath, high and quick, riding over the end. When it finished, the silence in the room deepened, like a held note. "If you didn't hear anything, you're about to drag me in the comments," she said lightly, trying to break the tension. "If you did hear something, congratulations, you're now in this with me." She paused, listening almost as intently as if she were one of her own viewers. The house hummed in the background in its usual way. Refrigerator, distant AC unit, a car passing far off. Nothing else. "Okay," she said. "Here's the plan. I'm going to put one camera here in the living room, one in the hall, and my audio recorder upstairs in my bedroom. I'll do a quick walkthrough, then leave everything running for, let's say, an hour at first, just to see. If nothing happens, cool, I'll sleep. If something does, we'll review it together." She reached out and turned the main camera off, then immediately turned it back on to capture the behind-the-scenes of setting up. By the time she'd positioned the second camera and perched the small audio recorder on her nightstand upstairs, the day's light had thinned. Long slashes of orange cut through the oak branches and painted the walls in strange, broken patterns. She set the bedroom recorder to roll and spoke softly toward it. "Test, test. It's 6:42 p.m. Emma, in the Marshall house. If anyone but me is here, I guess. Now is your chance to say hi on camera." It felt stupid. It also felt like swallowing. She left the door open and went back downstairs, letting the recorder capture the empty room. The house seemed to track her with its eyes. "Okay," Emma told camera 2 in the hallway, forcing a breezy tone. "We're going to start in the kitchen, because that's where I heard the metal sound the other night." She moved through the doorway, the hall camera catching her back as she went. The kitchen was bright, the white cabinets newer than anything else in the house. Modern appliances, peeling vinyl floor. Only the low, brick-lined hearth at one end hinted at an older life, a space where cooking fires had once burned. She turned her handheld mic on and spoke. "So, this used to be the original kitchen house, according to the listing. The walls were opened up and everything was connected in the 1920s, but back in the 1800s, this is probably where the cooking happened. Which means this room would have seen a lot." Her voice dropped at the last words, unplanned. She let herself be quiet for a moment, listening. The fridge hummed. Somewhere in the yard, a crow yelled. Her own breath sounded too loud in her ears. She said, feeling suddenly foolish and weirdly emotional. "If anyone used to work in this kitchen and you can hear me, I'm sorry for whatever you had to go through here. I'm just renting, basically. I'm not an owner. I'm not like him." The word him left her mouth before she'd fully decided to say it. She didn't really know who him was. Thomas A. Marshall was just a name on a heritage website. But the moment she said it, a prickle crawled up her spine, like she'd stepped over an invisible line. The air in front of the old hearth seemed to thicken. Emma's fingers clenched harder around the mic. "I don't want to bother anyone," she added quickly. "This is just for my channel, for other people, to tell the story of the house. If you want to say something, I guess you can talk into this." She held out the mic, feeling ridiculous enough that she almost laughed. The fridge clicked off. The quiet that followed was softer than any silence had a right to be. It was a held breath, a drawn bowstring, somewhere deep in the brick, so faint she might have imagined it. Something pinged lightly, like cooling metal. A draft pushed across her shins, though the windows were closed. The air smelled, just for a second, of smoke and molasses. Emma swallowed. "Okay," she whispered, backing up. That's enough kitchen for now." She narrated her way back through the hall and into the living room, giving the future edit her movements and feelings. It was something familiar she could do with her hands while her mind skittered at the edges of what she was, technically, inviting in. Over the next hour, she did a slow circuit of the downstairs, the dining room with its heavy built-in cabinet, the small back room off the kitchen that the agent had airily called a keeping room, like she should know what that meant. She ended at the foot of the narrow, steep back staircase, the one that led up to what the floor plan called servants' quarters. She hadn't gone up there yet. She panned the camera up the enclosed stairs, the faded wallpaper, the exposed nail heads. "So, this is, the back stairs," she told the viewers she'd have later. "I've watched enough movies to know this is the part where something stands at the top and, nope, I'm getting ahead of myself." Her laugh came out thin. She listened. Nothing. A rational part of her brain hated that she was doing this at dusk, when shadows were longest and everything in the human nervous system was wired to be jumpy. But if she waited until full dark, The video would be a mess of noisy black frames, and she'd scare herself worse. "This used to be where—" she began, then stopped, realizing she didn't actually know. She'd read extensive fields worked by enslaved laborers and kitchen house, but nothing about who had actually climbed these stairs. She thought of the DNA match with the last name Marshall, of the way the word enslaved had looked on the page, of Grandma Lila, never talking about anything further south than Ohio. "Okay," she told the empty air, softer now. "I don't know what this was for. I'm going to find out. I'm trying. I'm late, but I'm trying." Her voice surprised her. It had a tremor she hadn't intended. From somewhere above, dull, muffled through wood, came a single, distinct sound. 2 beats, a pause, 2 beats again, footsteps, crossing from one side of a small room to the other. Emma froze, every muscle locking. Her camera kept rolling, pointed up into the dim, filmy light at the top of the stairs. Nothing moved. The hallway above remained an empty rectangle. The footsteps didn't repeat. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. "Okay," she breathed finally, more to prove she could produce sound than anything. "That is our cue to end the walkthrough." She backed away, her hand not leaving the banister until she was in the relative safety of the wider front hall. By the time she'd checked each camera, confirmed the red lights were blinking, and set a timer on her phone for an hour, her forced calm had worn thin. She wanted a barrier between herself and all that unseen space. She stepped outside onto the front porch. The air wrapped around her like warm, damp cloth. The evening chorus of insects was ramping up, shrill and insistent. Across the yard, the oak tree's silhouette stood black against the last streaks of orange. Emma sat down on the top step, pulled out her phone, and texted Mia. "Cameras are rolling. If I die, title the video for me." Mia answered almost instantly. She lived here alone, until she didn't. "You're not gonna die." "FaceTime?" Emma hesitated, then hit call. Mia's face filled the screen, framed by the dim of her studio apartment. "Okay, Haunted House Barbie," Mia said. "Update me. On a scale of 1 to The Conjuring, how creeped are you?" Emma glanced back at the dark door behind her. "Like a solid 6.5, she admitted. "Maybe 7. I did the whole, 'if anyone is here' speech in the kitchen, and I swear something knocked in the wall." "In the kitchen?" Mia's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, that's bad. Kitchens are always where the worst stuff happens. Ask any exorcist." "Please stop," Emma said, half laughing. "Also, I may have heard footsteps upstairs, and I still haven't gone up the back stairs yet because I'm a coward." "You're a content creator who knows pacing," Mia corrected. "You saved the back stairs for episode 2. Emma felt some of the tightness in her chest ease. "Seriously, though," Mia went on, her tone softening. "How are you? Not your click-through rate. You're alone in a place where things happened. That's a lot." The question snuck under Emma's defenses. "I don't know," she said, surprising herself with the honesty. "Part of me is scared, obviously. Part of me feels like I shouldn't even be scared, like it's not about me. If there is anything here, it has every right to be angry, or sad, or whatever. I'm just passing through. And then there's this tiny, messed up part of me that's like, if the house is really haunted, my channel might actually take off." She winced as she said it. Mia's expression softened further. "You're allowed to want 2 things at once. To be freaked and also see the potential. Just don't forget the human part of the story. That's what people will connect to. Not just look, a ghost, but look, a history we never talk about." Emma's throat went tight again in a different way. "I don't even know the history," she said. "I know names, some dates, that's it. I don't know who cooked in that kitchen, who slept up those stairs, whose songs I'm hearing. Then maybe that's chapter 2 of your series, Mia said. Part 1, weird sounds. Part 2, research, interviews, libraries. Find some old lady who's lived there forever and bribe her with pie. Emma smiled, but something in what Mia said landed hard. Chapter 2 of your series. It made the whole thing feel less like a random haunting and more like a structure, like a story that expected her to keep turning pages. Her timer buzzed. She jumped. That's my cue to go see if anything tried to say hi, she said. Stay on. Do you even have to ask? Mia shifted her phone, settling in. You're taking me in there with you. If I see anything over your shoulder, I am hanging up and moving to Canada. Together, they stepped back into the house. It was darker inside than out. Emma flipped on a lamp in the living room, a pool of warm light around the chair and the mantel, and left the hallway light off so the screens wouldn't be blown out. She knelt by the main camera, fingers more careful than usual as she hit stop. Red light to black. No glitch, no sudden shut-off. It had run the full hour. She did the same in the hall, then went upstairs. The phone angled so Mia could see. The back staircase landing gaped to her right as she passed, a strip of deeper shadow beyond the safety of the front hall. We're not going up there, Emma muttered. Absolutely not, Mia agreed from the phone. That's a tomorrow problem. The audio recorder on the nightstand was still going. 010317. Emma stopped it, and only then realized her hands were sweating. Okay, she said. Review time. This is the fun part. Fun, Mia echoed. Sure. They set up in the living room. Laptop on the coffee table, cameras offloaded, files downloading in clunky real time. The house hummed softly around them. Emma started with the bedroom audio. The waveform scrolled past on the screen as the first minutes played. Mostly ambient noise. The soft whoosh of the AC. A distant car, her own footsteps as she left the room. For the first 20 minutes, nothing happened. At minute 21, she heard the faint creak of a floorboard, her own, coming back up to check something she'd forgotten. She scrubbed past it. At 43 minutes in, her eyes snagged on a small fluctuation in the waveform, a bump in an otherwise flat line. There, Mia said in her ear, even over the lag of the call. What was that? Emma rewound to 42. Silence, silence. Then, very faint, like someone humming under their breath 3 rooms away, came a string of notes, not quite a melody, not quite random. 3 tones, then a pause, then 2 lower ones. Emma froze the playback. That's not AC, Mia said quietly. Emma swallowed. Her finger hovered, then hit play again. This time she let it run past the notes. Immediately after the last tone, there was another sound. Softer, more familiar, and therefore somehow worse. A chain of small metallic taps, as if something light and hard had been knocked against wood in quick succession. Tap, 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 tap. Emma's skin went cold. In her mind, unbidden, she saw the pattern as something else. Not random knocks, but syllables, a cadence, an attempt at code. Could be a tree branch, she said weakly, or a bug hitting something. I don't know. Does Georgia have Morse code termites? Mia asked, but there was no humor in her voice now. Emma scrubbed the audio back and forth, looping the knocks, listening to the spaces between them, feeling, against her will, the shape of intention. Okay, she said after a moment, voice thin. Bedroom. Weird hum, weird knocks. But weird is like the baseline now. Let's check the hall cam. She pulled up the hall video, fast-forwarded through 30 minutes of an empty, dim hallway, her own walkthrough in the middle, her back at the base of the stairs, her quick retreat. What if something shows up behind you? Mia murmured. Like, in post. Like that video where the guy sees himself walk past his own door. Why would you say that? Emma hissed, but her eyes were glued to the preview window. The moment with the back stairs came. There she was, talking to the camera, saying she was going to find out what the stairs had been for. The audio waveform spiked when her voice wavered. Then right at the point in the memory when she'd heard the footsteps, the hallway cam picked something up. Not a figure, not a shadow, a vibration. The image shook, very slightly. 2 short, soft tremors like something heavy had moved upstairs. The jolt translated through the wall into the tripod. "Did you see that?" Mia breathed. Emma backed up the clip, played it again. As she watched, she realized the faintest dust drifted from the ceiling at the edge of the frame, barely visible in the gray. Someone had definitely walked across the room above. Her breath came shallow. She forced herself to keep watching. For the rest of the camera's recording, nothing else happened. No ghostly figures on the stairs, no lights flickering, just the steady, low grain of the image. "Last one," she said. Her voice didn't sound like hers. She opened the living room file. For 30 minutes it was just her house, the chair, the mantel, the doorway to the hall, light slowly fading. Around minute 35, something changed. It wasn't a movement exactly. It was like the color temperature of the room shifted for half a second. Warmer, then cooler. If you weren't looking for it, you could miss it. "What was that?" Mia whispered. Emma rewound, frame by frame through the flicker. On the exact frame where the color changed, there was a shape standing in the doorway to the hall. It was there for one frame only. 1/30th of a second. Her brain almost refused to parse it at first, like an optical illusion. Then her eyes locked in, and she stopped breathing. It wasn't a full body, more a suggestion, a warp of light denser than the air around it. But the outline was unmistakable. A shoulder, the hint of a head, turned slightly to the side, as if listening, and at about the height where a hand would be on a person standing there. The wall behind the figure looked different, darker, a faint, irregular smudge at about knee level, like something had brushed against it over and over in the same place. "Zoom in," Mia said, barely audible. Emma did. The pale pixels broke apart, but the impression held. The curve of a figure, the darker streak on the wall. When she cranked the contrast up, something glinted faintly at the edge of that streak, a thin vertical line. It could have been a scratch in the paint. It could have been a chain. Emma yanked back from the keyboard as if it had burned her. "I'm done," she said, voice high. Okay, that's enough. I need water." She stood up too fast, the room tilting for a second. On the screen, the empty living room continued to roll past, unaware of having caught anything at all. Mia said softly. "Breathe. You're okay. You're in your house in the middle of the day. The door is locked. You're on FaceTime with me. You're not alone." Emma forced air in and out of her lungs. "I invited this," she said hoarsely. I held out a mic and said, "Talk to me." "And something maybe did," Mia said. "Which is a lot. But you didn't, open a portal. You just pointed a camera at what was already here." Emma sank back onto the couch, her knees weak. On the coffee table, Grandma Lila's photo leaned in its frame, the younger version of her grandmother, squinting into some long-ago sun. Emma stared at it. "Do you think?" she began, then stopped. "Do I think what?" Mia prompted. "Nothing," Emma said. "It's stupid." Mia waited. Emma sighed. "Do you think it's possible that this house has something to do with my family?" she asked quietly. "I mean, statistically it probably doesn't. There were a lot of places like this. But the DNA match. L. Marshall, in Georgia, what if..." She trailed off, the thought too big to finish. What if your people were here? Mia supplied gently. Not by choice. Emma's eyes burned suddenly. I feel like I'm trespassing, she said. Like I bought a ticket to a movie that's about them. About what happened here, and I'm sitting in the front row going, look at me react. Mia was very still on the screen. What if, she said slowly. This isn't just you reacting. What if this is you? Listening, finally. Maybe this is you walking into the theater because someone kept saving you a seat. The idea landed somewhere in Emma's chest that had been empty before. How? She whispered. I don't even know who to listen for. Then start with who you have, Mia said. Call your mom. Ask about your grandma, about anyone who ever lived south of Ohio. Ask if she's ever heard the name Marshall outside a history book. Emma looked at the video timeline again, at the frozen frame of that almost figure in the doorway. Tonight, she said. I'll call her tonight. Darkness fell faster here than it did in the city. 1 minute, the yard was washed in blue-gray. The next, the windows were black mirrors. Emma closed her laptop, turned on more lamps than she technically needed, and heated up leftovers without really tasting them. After dishes, after pacing the living room 3 separate times, she made herself pick up her phone and tap her mother's name. It rang 3 times. Hey, baby, her mom's voice came, warm and immediate. How's my southern lady? Emma laughed under her breath, tension bleeding out at the familiar sound. I don't know about lady, she said, but I'm here. I'm good, tired. There are a lot of bugs. That's because God didn't intend for people to live somewhere that warm, her mother said. Send me a picture of that big tree in your yard again. I showed it to the ladies at church. They were impressed. The oak. Emma turned toward the dark window automatically, seeing only her own reflection. It's big, kinda looming. Old things loom, her mother said. Does the house still smell like old wood and dust? And other stuff, Emma said cautiously. Sometimes I swear I smell like burnt sugar, like molasses. There was a pause on the line, just a fraction of a beat longer than normal. Huh, her mother said. That's specific. Emma hesitated. Mom, she said, can I ask you something kind of weird? Only if you preface it exactly like that. Her mom replied dryly. Go on. Did Grandma Lila ever talk about the South? Emma asked. Like, this South, before Cleveland, like where her people came from. I know we did that family tree project in 8th grade, but it only went back so far. On the other end, Emma could hear the rustle of paper, the distant clank of something in the kitchen. Her mother was probably tidying as they talked. She never could sit still on the phone. Not much, her mother said eventually. You know how she was. Ain't nothing for me down there but heat and history, she used to say. She didn't like to look back past her own mama. Why? Emma's grip tightened on the phone. I did one of those DNA tests, she said. A while ago. The results came in and I finally looked. There's a match. Somebody with the last name Marshall. In Georgia. Supposedly a 3rd cousin. She waited. Her mother's silence this time was heavy. Marshall, she repeated slowly. In Georgia. Something in her tone made the back of Emma's neck prickle. You recognize that? Emma asked. Her mother exhaled, a sound that was part sigh, part something else. Your great-grandmother. My grandma used to say a name when she'd get really tired, her mother said. When she was doing too much cleaning or cooking, and her back would start to hurt. She'd mutter, I ain't on Marshall land no more. These folks gon' pick up after theyselves. Emma's heart stuttered. She never explained it, her mother went on. At least not to me. I asked once when I was about your age. She looked at me like I'd asked her to cut herself open. She said, "That's old talk. We don't need to carry that no more." And that was the end of it. Emma sat down without realizing she'd moved. She said, "Marshall Land," she repeated, "and we have a DNA match with a Marshall. And I live in a Marshall house." She said the last words very quietly. "What do you mean you live in a Marshall house?" her mother asked. Her voice had lost its easy lilt. Emma swallowed. "That's what they call this place here," she said. "The Marshall House. It was built by some guy named Thomas A. Marshall in the 1840s. I thought it was just local history, like calling a park after someone. I didn't think it had anything to do with us." On the other end, her mother went very, very quiet. "Mom," Emma said, suddenly afraid. "I should have asked more," her mother said softly, almost to herself. "I should have made her talk, but you have to understand. When you've spent your whole life trying to get away from something, sometimes silence feels like freedom." The line crackled faintly. "Emma," her mother said, "listen to me. I don't know if that house has anything to do with us. It might not. But if it is connected, if our people were on that land once, it is nothing you did. You didn't go looking for that name. It found you." A shiver walked down Emma's spine. "Has anything weird been happening?" her mother asked suddenly, her voice tight. In the house, images flashed in Emma's mind. The singing, the clink of unseen metal, the almost figure in the hallway. "Define weird?" she tried. "Emma." She closed her eyes. "I heard a song," she said. "A couple nights, like field songs, almost, and I caught something on camera, not like a full person, just a shape, in the hall, and knocking, in patterns. Mom, I'm not making this up. I have recordings." Her mother's breath hitched, audible even through the tiny phone speaker. "Baby, you need to pray," she said immediately, "and maybe call a pastor there, or a root worker, or somebody who knows about this sort of thing. You don't play with spirits." "I'm not playing," Emma said quickly. "I'm listening." The words surprised her. They felt truer than anything she'd said in days. On the other end, her mother was quiet for a long time. "When I was little," she said finally, "we had this song. Your grandma would hum it when she did my hair. I never knew the words, just the sound. It didn't sound like anything I heard in church. I asked her where it came from. She said, old folks used to sing it in the field." The hairs on Emma's arms rose. "Can you hum it?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her mother hesitated, then began to hum into the phone. The sound was thin through the speaker but clear. A low, lilting pattern. 3 notes, then a pause, then 2 answering notes lower down. Not exactly like the bedroom recording, but so close that Emma's eyes flooded without warning. "That's the same shape," she choked. Mom, that's what I heard. That's what they're singing." Her mother stopped abruptly. "I don't like this," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't like you there alone. I knew I didn't like you buying some old plantation." "It's not a plantation," Emma began automatically. "It's just a house. A house that used to be part of one." Her mother snapped, then caught herself. "I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at circumstance." In the pause that followed, something creaked in the ceiling above Emma's head. It was just the house adjusting to the cool of the evening. It was also, unmistakably, right above the spot where she stood. "I can sell," Emma said suddenly. The idea made her stomach drop, but she said it anyway. "I can leave. If it's wrong for me to be here, I can—" "No," her mother said, surprising her. "Not yet. We run too easy. sometimes for good reason. But if there's something there that belongs to us, a name, a story, a song, maybe you're there to bring it home. Emma's throat closed. How? She whispered. Start with the library, her mother said. Courthouse records, old folks. Every southern town's got somebody who knows everybody's business back 3 generations. Find them, ask careful, and if that singing comes back, you tell them you hear it. You tell them you're listening. You tell them you're Lila's granddaughter. The room seemed to lean in around Emma at the name. I don't know how much I ever told you about my grandma, her mother added. About Lila. She was hard and soft, both. She used to say, they tried to bury us, but they forgot the roots. There was a small, watery laugh. Maybe they didn't forget. Maybe they just didn't see. The words landed somewhere deep in Emma's chest, where fear and curiosity and something like belonging warred. Call me tomorrow, her mother said. Tell me you slept. Tell me what you find out. Promise. I promise, Emma said. After they hung up, the house was very quiet. Emma stood in the middle of the living room, phone still in her hand, feeling the echo of the humming vibrate in her bones. Slowly, she crossed to the mantel and picked up the photo of Grandma Lila. The young woman in the picture squinted into the sun, one hand on her hip. There was a stubborn set to her mouth that Emma recognized in her own reflection. I guess we're back, Emma said softly to the empty room, whether we meant to be or not. She set the frame back down, angling it slightly toward the hallway where the almost figure had stood. Then, heart pounding, she walked to the doorway and stood in the exact spot where the camera had caught that warped outline. Up close, the darker streak on the wall was more obvious. The paint there, an off-white from some renovation in the 1990s, was scuffed at about knee-height, as if something had rubbed against it over and over. The faint, vertical scratch she'd seen on screen was real, too. A tiny groove in the wood trim. It could have been from furniture. It could have been from a chain. She took out her phone, opened the voice memos app, and hit record. My name is Emma, she said into the quiet. My grandmother's name was Lila. Her grandmother might have been here, on Marshall Land. I don't know your name. I want to. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I'm sorry it took this long, she said. For one of us to come back, for one of us to ask, if anyone is still here. I hear you. I heard your song. I heard your chains. I don't want to film you like some zoo exhibit. I want to know who you were, if you want me to. She felt ridiculous and awed all at once. The air stayed still, then very softly, almost too low to be sound, something moved in the wall behind her. A soft, slow scrape, like fingers sliding down plaster. Emma's breath hitched. She didn't run. She stood very still and let the recorder run. After a long moment, from somewhere that felt halfway between the floorboards and her own chest, she heard it. One note, low, steady. A single hum, like the very beginning of a song. It swelled just enough to be sure it was real, then faded, leaving the house humming in its usual, mundane way. Emma's eyes stung. Okay, she whispered, not trusting her voice at full volume. Okay, I hear you. She stopped the recording. Later, when she uploaded the files and backed them up 3 different ways, she labeled that last memo not hallway EVP or possible voice capture, the way a paranormal channel might have. She titled it something else. First answer. The night the song finally finished itself, the power went out. Emma had spent the whole day doing the one thing she'd been avoiding since the moment she Googled Marshall House history. Sitting in a small-town archive room, reading other people's handwriting. The county library was bigger than she'd expected, but the local history corner, 2 metal filing cabinets, a microfilm machine, and a bored volunteer in a knit cardigan, felt exactly right. "You'll want deed books, probably," the volunteer Mrs. Carter had said when Emma explained, carefully, that she'd just bought the old Marshall place and wanted to know more about who had lived and worked there. And the Heritage Association binder. Lord knows they loved that house. Now 12 hours later, those words rang in her ears as she flipped through the copies she'd made and spread them across her dining room table. The overhead light buzzed faintly. Outside, thunder muttered somewhere beyond the oak. She picked up one of the photocopies. The black and white blur of a 19th century census form stared back at her, neat ink letters crawling across faded lines. 1860, columns for free white persons, columns for free colored persons, and then a set of tiny, cramped boxes on a separate page. Slaves, no names, just numbers, age marks, gender marks. Thomas A. Marshall, head of household. 6, 14, 9. Emma's stomach churned. She pushed that sheet aside and picked up another. A page from a 1930s slave narrative project. One of the interviews done with formerly enslaved people when they were very old, and the country was trying, briefly, to write down the stories it had tried so hard to forget. The copy was dark, the type uneven, but the name at the top was clear enough. Lucy, no last name given, age about 86. Emma swallowed and read again, hearing the voice between the lines now that she'd been listening for it. "I was born on Marshall Place down near the river. We called it that, Marshall Place, 'cause that what the white folks called it. My mama named Dinah. My papa, he in the big house yard, work the horses. I don't remember him but a little. They say Master Marshall sell him when I was small." Emma's eyes stung. She dropped her gaze lower on the page. "I was house gal after I get big enough. Carry water, sweep, watch the white chillun. Master's oldest boy, he the one go to the war. Mrs., she always say, 'Lucy, you mind them steps, don't you slip and break your neck. I ain't buying another gal for that.'" Emma had stopped the first time she'd read that line, the words, "them steps," punching through her like a physical thing. Now she read on, feeling the now familiar sick electric tension of recognition coil in her chest. "After freedom come, my mama say, we goin'. I ain't stayin' on Marshall land one day past what the Lord say. We slip off in the night. Took us 3 days to get away. They ain't come after us hard, war near over then, and they got they own troubles. But I still hear that place in my sleep, sometime. The song we used to sing going up that back stair. We didn't make no noise in the house, but we sing in we throat. Keep time with we chains." Emma flipped the page over, hunting for more. The next sheet in the binder had been copied crookedly. Part of the text was cut off. "Is there more of this one?" she had asked Mrs. Carter earlier, heart pounding. "Sometimes the WPA transcripts are incomplete," the older woman had said, peering over her glasses. "Pages get lost. Did you check the index?" Emma had. The entry ended where her copy ended. That was all anyone had bothered to preserve of Lucy's story. Now back in the house, whose name sat like a stone in her throat, Emma traced the edge of the photocopy with one finger. Lucy, Dinah, no last names. "We called it that, Marshall Place." A low growl of thunder rolled closer. The overhead bulb flickered, then steadied. On the other side of the table, another copy lay face down, the ink showing through faintly. Emma flipped it. This one was from the deed books. 1872. A cramped paragraph, legal phrases wrapped around something sharper. "Hereby transfer, convey, and assign the property known as the Marshall Place, including main dwelling, kitchen house, and all appurtenances, to one Elijah Cooper, for payment rendered, and in consideration of..." She'd skimmed it earlier, disappointed that it seemed to be about what became the white side of the story. Ownership, transfer, land. But a small notation in the margin, in a different, later hand, had caught her eye. She read it again now, the pencil marks faint but legible. Family oral history says Cooperman allowed some of Marshall's colored to stay on as tenants until about 1880. One of the women, called Luce, or Lula, said to have a baby by Marshall's son. Baby girl taken north. Name unknown. The thunder cracked. Louder this time, like the sky laughing without humor. Emma flinched. Baby girl, taken north. Her mind jumped, unbidden, to the blank space in every family story past Grandma Lila's mother, to the way her mother had said, "I should have asked more." Maybe the connection was wishful thinking. Maybe every former plantation had a story like this. Women whose children were shipped away when they were too complicated to keep. But the coincidence sat there anyway, heavy and insistent. Baby girl, north, unknown name. A flicker of memory surfaced. The first time she'd seen Grandma Lila's birth certificate in a folder of old papers. Place of birth, Cleveland, Ohio. Mother's name, Dinah L. Cooper. She hadn't thought about it then. It was just a name. One of 1,000 tiny facts that made up a family. Now the back of her neck prickled. She picked up her phone and opened the DNA app. The match list glowed softly. L. Marshall, estimated third cousin. The little gray silhouette seemed to be looking back at her, amused. "What if your people were here?" Mia had said. "Not by choice." The overhead light flickered again. "Okay," Emma said aloud, voice thin. "I get it. Dramatic timing." She gathered the papers into a stack with hands that weren't quite steady and set them aside. The room felt warmer than it had a moment ago. Or maybe that was just her. Outside, the wind picked up, flinging a handful of rain against the window with a rapid patter. The house seemed to brace itself. Her phone buzzed. A storm alert. Severe thunderstorm warning for your area until 11:30 p.m. She checked the time. 9:14. Enough time to talk herself into or out of whatever she was thinking of doing. The rational part of her brain said, "Turn off the lights, go to bed, be a normal person in a weird house during a storm." The part of her that had labeled a recording "first answer" said, "This is when they sang. This is when they walked up those stairs. This is when your people left." She found herself moving before she'd fully decided. In the living room, she pulled the heavy curtains mostly closed, leaving a narrow gap where she could see the outline of the oak thrashing against the sky. She turned off the overhead and left only a lamp on near the mantel, the light a warm puddle in the otherwise dim room. On the coffee table, she set her phone, her small audio recorder, and the printed copy of Lucy's narrative. On the mantel, she lifted Grandma Lila's picture and carried it carefully to the table, resting it against a stack of books so that her grandmother's younger self was facing the doorway to the hall. "Okay," she said softly, feeling foolish and solemn at the same time. "Okay, let's do this." She wasn't sure what "this" was exactly. All she knew was that she needed to ask. She turned the recorder on, the familiar red light steady. "It's Emma," she said, voice a little high. "I'm back. You probably know that already. You probably hear me stomping around up there all the time." Lightning flashed outside, bleaching the room for half a second. Emma swallowed. "I went to the library," she went on. "I read about this place, about Marshall Land, about someone named Lucy, and Dinah, and a baby girl who got taken away. I don't know if that baby girl is the reason I exist, but if she is, then I'm sorry for how long it took me to come back." The rain thickened, tapping insistently at the windows like someone drumming their fingers. She glanced at the audio recorder, half expecting to see the waveform dancing with 100 hidden voices. It stayed calm. "I know I'm not the one who paid the price for anything that happened here," she said. "I live in the big house. I have the deed. I got the good mortgage rate. That's not fair, and I can't fix it. But I can listen, and I can say your names if you tell me." The words felt clumsy in her mouth. Her cheeks burned, even alone. A low creak passed through the floor, slow and heavy, as if someone had just shifted weight in the next room. She waited. The storm filled the silence, the sky flickering. After a moment where nothing more than thunder answered her, a familiar, panicky thought shoved its way in. What if this is all in your head? What if the singing was a plumbing quirk and the figure in the hall was compression artifact? What if you're building a whole identity crisis on glitches? You know what? Maybe I... The lights went out. All at once, the house dropped into darkness, so complete that it felt like a physical blow. Emma sucked in a sharp breath. The lamp died. The buzzing overhead stopped. The fridge fell silent. For a second, the only sound was rain, suddenly much louder in the absence of anything mechanical. Her phone screen glowed faintly on the table. The recorder's red light burned brighter in the dark. From somewhere near the kitchen came the soft click of something. Maybe a breaker, maybe nothing at all. The house adjusted to its new state, like a body exhaling. "Of course," Emma whispered. "Of course the power would go out right now." "Why not?" "Sky, you couldn't wait 20 minutes?" Lightning flashed, lightning gone, leaving ghost stripes behind her eyes. The darkness pressed in. Without the hum of electricity, the house sounded older, closer to whatever it had been before wires and outlets and smart thermostats. Emma took 2 careful steps and sat down on the floor beside the coffee table, closer to the little pool of light from her phone. "Okay," she said again, for herself this time. "Okay." She reached up and picked up Grandma Lila's photo, holding it in both hands. "I was about to bail," she admitted in a low voice. "You see this? This is your granddaughter chickening out. Typical." In the dim glow, the younger Lila's face looked more serious than it had that morning, the set of her mouth almost stern. "You used to say, they tried to bury us, but they forgot the roots," Emma murmured. "Well, Grandma, I think I'm sitting in the dirt." The room gave no answer, except a sound rose from the floor itself. At first she thought it was the wind forcing itself through some old gap, a low, breathy tone that vibrated somewhere between her ears and her ribcage. Then it steadied, held, resolved into a note. That note rose, just slightly, then fell. Another, lower, answered it. 3. Pause. 2. Emma's throat closed. It was the pattern her mother had hummed into the phone, the shape from the bedroom recording, here now in this room, wrapping around her like a shawl. She set the photo frame carefully back on the table and fumbled for the recorder, pulling it closer. The red light stared back at her. "I hear you," she whispered into the dark. "I hear you." The note swelled, not louder but closer. A second voice braided with it, then a third. Their pitches were low, almost a murmur, but the rhythm was precise, old. Lightning flashed again, painting the walls bone white for an instant. In that flash, in the open doorway to the hall, Emma saw them. Not crisp, not solid, more like impressions where the air was denser. 3 figures standing near the base of the narrow back staircase. The one closest to her was small and straight-backed, a cloth bundle in her hands, head wrapped. Behind her, a taller shape, shoulders a little hunched as if from a lifetime of bending over. Between them, lower to the ground, the suggestion of something like a child hiding behind a skirt. The light vanished. They vanished with it. The song did not. Emma's hands shook. Her breath came quick and loud. Every horror movie instinct screamed at her to scramble for the door, to throw herself into the storm, to run until her legs gave out. Instead, she stayed. She closed her eyes, because somehow looking into the dark was worse than looking into the inside of her own skull. And listened. The melody looped, slightly different each time, as if the singers were improvising within the pattern. It wasn't in any language she knew, but here and there, her ear caught something like words. Ho, home, water, go. She leaned closer to the recorder. My name is Emma, she whispered, so softly she barely heard herself. I'm Lila's granddaughter, Dinah L. Cooper's great-granddaughter. The song faltered for a half-beat. Then one voice, one of the lower ones, worn and rough but steady, slid out from the weave of sound. A word, clear enough that she would never convince herself she'd imagined it. Emma. Not quite the way she said it. The vowels were a little longer, the consonants softer. Emma. But it was her name. Her body went cold and hot at the same time. Yes, she said, tears pricking her eyes. Yes, I'm here. The voice whispered something else. The syllables were thick, shaped by a mouth used to other sounds. Emma strained, willing her brain to make sense. So, late, it sounded like. Or maybe, so, long. Then, Dina. Baby. Emma's heart stuttered. Dinah, she breathed. You know Dinah. A different voice cut in then, higher, thin with age. If sound could be brittle, this was. It snapped through the air like a twig. Lucy, it hissed. Lucy, say don't look back. Lucy, say run, gal. Run when you can. Emma's chest ached. Lucy, she repeated aloud. I read about you. They wrote you down. Not all the way, but enough. The voices shifted, overlapping. For a moment, the room filled with the sense of movement, of people bunched together in a small space, breath and fear and sweat and hope. She saw it, not with her eyes, but somewhere behind them. The narrow back staircase in a different light, not painted gray and unused, but lit by a dim candle at the top. Women in rough skirts moving silent as they could. Chains irons at their ankles, smudging the wall as they brushed past. Mouths closed, throats pulsing with song so soft it was almost only in their heads. We sing and we throat. Keep time with we chains. Some of y'all got free, Emma whispered. You left. You made it north. We're there. We've been there. I'm sorry nobody came back sooner. I'm sorry. You had to keep singing here alone. Her cheeks were wet now. She hadn't realized she was crying. The lower voice spoke again, a little stronger. Free, it said. You free. There was no envy in it. No accusation. Only a statement, heavy with both fact and something like relief. Because of you, Emma said, choking. Because you paid. I'm sitting in a house you never got to walk through as a guest. I have a deed in my name to land you were owned on. That's wrong. The word was too small. She gulped for air. I can't fix that, she went on, but I can change what the deed means. I can change what this house is for. The storm rumbled agreement or warning overhead. How? She asked the dark, the recorder, her own buzzing mind. How do I make it less of a graveyard? For a moment, there was only rain and the soft static hiss of the house. Then the brittle voice spoke again, each word separate, like it was being pushed uphill. Speak, it said. Name, the lower voice echoed, gentler. Say we name. Emma's head spun. Lucy, she said. Dinah, Dinah's mama, the baby girl they took. Anyone who had to walk them steps. Anyone who sang in their throat so the walls wouldn't hear. I don't know all your names yet, but I will. I'll find as many as I can, and I'll say them, out loud, with the camera on. I'll tell people this house wasn't just Marshall's, it was yours. She hadn't known she was going to promise that until the words were already in the air. But as soon as she did, something in the atmosphere shifted. The pressure that had been building in her ears eased like a storm breaking. The song changed, too. The pattern smoothed, the urgency in the rhythm softening into something almost gentle. Lightning flashed again. In that instant, in the doorway, she saw only the outline of the back staircase and the empty hall. The figures were gone. The song dwindled, note by note, like a river running out of stones to tap against. The last tone hung, trembling, then dissolved into the ordinary rush of rain on the roof. Somewhere in the walls, the house shuddered, a deep, structural sigh. The power came back on. The lamp blinked to life. The overhead buzzed, restarting its soft hum. The fridge gurgled, as if nothing had ever happened. Emma was still on the floor, knees pressed into the worn wood, palms damp against the boards. The recorder's red light was steady. Slowly, like someone coming out of very deep water, she reached out and clicked it off. The silence that followed was so normal that her head spun. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. "Mia, you alive, or did your ghost roommates finally unionize?" Emma laughed once, a wild sound. Her hands shook as she typed. "Remind me to tell you what 'so late, Dina baby' sounds like when an 100-plus-year-old voice says it in the dark." Mia's reply came fast. "Nope. FaceTime. Now." Emma hesitated. "Not yet," she whispered, more to herself than to her friend. Instead, she pushed herself to her feet, every muscle protesting. At the table, Grandma Lila's photo looked perfectly ordinary again. Just a girl in front of a brick house in a northern city, squinting into the sun, having no idea her granddaughter would one day talk to the ghosts her grandmother refused to name. "I made a promise," Emma told her. Her voice was hoarse. "So I guess we're making different kinds of home videos now." She offered the photo a wobbly smile. "You'd probably think I've lost it," she went on, talking to air, making content out of ghosts. "But you also told Mom, we don't need to carry that no more. Maybe it's not carrying if I put some of it down, spread it out, let other people pick up what they can handle." She set the frame back, this time deliberately pointing it, not just at the hall, but at the camera on the tripod in the living room. Then she sat down at her computer. The storm still grumbled outside, but the house felt lighter. Not empty, never that, but less clenched. She plugged in the recorder, fingers clumsy, and imported the last file. The waveform filled the screen, a long, undulating line. Her stomach flipped. She hesitated, then hit play. Her own voice came first, thin and uncertain. "It's Emma, back. Went to the library." She scrubbed ahead to where the power went out. The audible click of the lamp, her sharp inhale, the sudden drop in ambient hum. Then unmistakable, the low rising note. The answering fall. The pattern she could now hum without thinking. She closed her eyes and listened all the way through. The layered voices were faint, but there. Her software's visualizer picked them up as spikes, peaks where there should have been only background hiss. The word Emma, or Emma, stood out in the middle, a little ridge in the sound landscape. When the brittle voice said what sounded like, "Lucy say don't look back," the hair on her arms lifted again, even in the now well-lit room. At "Dina baby," her throat closed. She stopped the playback and sat very still. This time she didn't try to tell herself it was pipes or interference or her brain misfiring. She knew the difference now between a trick of sound and a voice leaning across 150 years to tap her on the shoulder. The question now wasn't if. It was what next. Her gaze slid to the open project file for her last vlog. The video where she'd caught the first whisper and left it in with question marks as a cute bit. Her cursor hovered over the timeline. The easy, algorithm-friendly choice would be to cut the night entirely. Keep the channel light, tour the house, talk about furniture, Maybe add one ghost video with jump cuts and captions, then move on when the views dipped. The thought made her stomach knot. The other choice was harder. Shift the channel, shift herself. Make the house not just a backdrop, but the subject. Make the ghosts not punchlines, but sources. Treat Lucy's fragment of story and Dinah's muttered Marshall Land not as curiosities, but as anchors. Turn this into something that would require research, interviews, uncomfortable conversations, probably trolls telling her to get over it and stop living in the past. It felt like standing at the top of that back staircase, looking down into a dark she couldn't see the bottom of. Emma exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said to the empty room. "Okay." She opened a new document. Title: The House That Remembers. Episode 1. Whose history is this? She stared at the blinking cursor, then started to type. "I moved into this house because I thought it would be a cool background," she wrote. "I thought its age would be an aesthetic. I was wrong. This house is a story I wasn't told. It's a story my family tried not to tell. It's also a story that, for some reason, has decided I should help carry it now." The words felt clumsy and earnest and not anywhere near enough. She kept going. She wrote about waking up to singing, about the county brochure's one line about enslaved laborers, about the DNA match with the name Marshall, about her mother humming a tune that had never been in any hymn book. She didn't write about the exact words the voices had said. Yet, that felt too raw, too intimate, like showing a letter before she'd fully read it herself. But she wrote around it. She wrote about a woman named Lucy whose interview cut off too soon, about the baby girl with no recorded name, about a phrase, Marshall Land, that had survived as a muttered curse in one woman's kitchen for decades after the last chain had been unfastened. "If ghosts exist," she typed, "maybe they're not here to scare us. Maybe they're here because we never finished listening, because we left the stories halfway through the sentence, because we turned away when it got uncomfortable. This series is me, trying not to turn away." Her fingers moved faster as she found the shape of it. "This isn't a haunted house channel," she wrote. "This is a what do you do when you find out your home is built over someone else's grief channel. This is a what does it mean to inherit trauma and silence, and also Wi-Fi and home equity channel." She snorted softly at herself, but left the line in. By the time she hit save, the storm had rolled further away. The rain softened to a steady, gentle patter. She stood, stretching the stiffness out of her shoulders, and walked to the bottom of the back stairs. The narrow steps rose into the half-dark of the second floor. The wallpaper was worn smooth at hip height by hands long gone. The scuff mark on the wall, the one she'd imagined 100 ways, looked almost ordinary in the buoyant light from her phone. She put her foot on the first step, then the second. Each creak sounded like a word. Halfway up, she paused and laid her palm flat against the wall, right where the paint was darkest. The plaster was cool. "I'm not here to own this," she said quietly. "I'm here to steward it, for as long as I'm supposed to, and then I'll make sure it goes to someone who understands what land like this costs." She didn't know yet what that meant in practical terms. A trust, a non-profit, a memorial, an artist's residency, a historical site, something. She only knew that keeping it as her private, pretty backdrop forever felt wrong. At the top of the stairs, a short hall opened into 2 small rooms. Sloping ceilings, narrow windows. The air was warmer up here, tinged with dust and something else. Old soap, maybe, or sweat sunk into wood. She stepped into the first room. Empty, bare floorboards. A single nail in the wall where a picture might once have hung. She exhaled. "Not so scary in the daylight, huh?" she murmured. As she turned to go, something caught her eye in the corner where the floor met the wall. She crouched. A hairline crack ran along the baseboard. In one tiny section, The paint had flaked away in a neat thumbnail-sized oval. Beneath it, carved faintly into the wood, was a shape. She leaned closer, heart speeding. Not a full name. Just two letters, overlapped, an L and a C. The carving was shallow, almost worn smooth by time. But the intent was there. Someone had scratched their mark into the only space they had any control over. LC, Emma whispered. Lucy Cooper, Lucy Nobody, Lucy from down near the river. Lucy who said don't look back. Tears blurred her vision again. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and took a photo. Then another, closer. The screen filled with the tiny, stubborn letters. I found you, she said, voice thick. Not all of you, but enough. The floor creaked lightly under her feet. Just the wood, just age. She felt something loosen in her own chest in response. Later, when the video went live, after late-night editing and second-guessing and a long call with her mother about what she was and wasn't ready to share yet, it would start modestly. No screaming jump cuts, no circled shadows in thumbnails, just Emma in the living room, the oak tree's filtered light behind her, and the words, "This is not the video I thought I'd be making when I bought this house." Comments would trickle in at first. A few people would unsubscribe, bored or annoyed that the haunted house girl was talking about history and slavery and generational silence instead of giving them more adrenaline hits. Others would find the video through an algorithmic accident and see their own family's phrases and unsaid things reflected in hers. One woman would write, "My grandma used to say, 'We ain't on Carter land no more,' when she got tired. I never knew what it meant until now. Thank you." Another, "My people are from a Marshall place in Alabama. The song you hummed, my mom used to hum something like that too. I thought she made it up. I'm crying." A local historian would email, offering access to additional records. A distant cousin with the username L. Marshall 974 would message, saying, "I think we might need to talk." But all that was ahead. Right now, Emma was alone in the back room of an old house, staring at two tiny letters in the wood and feeling, for the first time, not like an intruder or a tourist, but like a bridge. Outside, the storm finally moved on. The oak tree dripped, the house settled, it still creaked, it still sighed, it still held its share of whispers. But somewhere between the floorboards and the walls, between the old songs and the new wires, something had shifted. The echo wasn't only backwards anymore, it was forwards too. "Okay," Emma said again, softly, to the empty rooms, to her unseen audience, to the women who had walked these stairs with iron on their ankles and resistance in their throats. "Let's tell it right this time.